will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. Your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you,
you higher, we lift you higher. Oh, we magnify your name. We magnify your name. For you are great and greatly to be praised. Oh, Jesus, no sweeter name I know. Yahweh, how we love you, Jesus. How we love you, Jesus. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Go down deep. Let my roots go down deep. Oh, like a tree planted beside the living waters. Let my roots go down deep. Let my roots go down deep. Oh, I want to abide in you. I want to remain in you till it's you and me and you. Oh, let my roots go down deep. Let my roots go down deep. Let my roots go down, 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 down deep. Yeah, whatever comes, let the wind blow, let the storm rage. I am in you. I am in you. I am in you. Oh, you are a firm foundation. You are the rock that's higher than I. And I set my feet upon you. Yeah. So let my roots go down deep. Let My roots go down deep till it's me and you and you and me and me and you and you and me. Oh, I want to remain. Teach me to abide in you. Spring up a well inside of me. Spring up a well inside of me. Spring up a well, spring up a well. Let the fountains of the deep be opened up on the inside of me. Spring up a well, spring up a well, spring up a well. Just wherever you are this morning, let praise begin to come out of your lips. Even there, sitting in your home, sitting in your living room, wherever you're at, just begin to release a sound this morning. I feel even a unity in the family this morning through this live stream. Just all over this region, all over the nation. Just begin to lift your voices with me. Come on. From a deep place, from a deep place, let praise come forth, let praise come forth, for he is worthy, he is worthy, he is worthy. Oh yeah, the sound of victory, the sound of victory, the sound of victory. Oh,
stay in that place right now. There's something on that melody. There's really something on that melody. Just close your eyes right wherever you are. There's an invitation in that melody to go somewhere, to be taken somewhere. Just extend your hands and just say, I'll go with you. I'll go with you. I'll go with you. Let's close your eyes and be taken. I feel the dimensions calling us. I feel the deep calling us. Just take another breath, because it's His breath in our lungs. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Come away with me. Come away with me, my beloved. Right here, right now. Oh, yeah.
I love, I love your presence. I love, I love you, Jesus. I love, I love your presence. Oh, yes, I do. Just love to be with you. Oh. In the glory of your presence, I find rest for my soul. In the depths of your love, I find peace that makes me whole. Oh, in the glory of your presence, I find rest for my soul. In the depths of your love, I find peace, makes me whole. Oh, and I love, I love your presence, and I love, I love your presence, and I love, I love you, Jesus. I love, oh, I love your presence, and I love, yeah, I love your presence, I love, I love your presence, and I love, I love you, Jesus. I love, oh, I love your presence. Face to face, I love the face to face with you. And I
It's interesting to me that we got into this flow by way of doing this and seeing his hand extended to us. And that just opened something up, and it always does in this kind of open-ended worship that we do, that you guys are so much a part of. And so in that music, in the songs that we were singing, you could just feel him saying, "Open up to me." And we did. And it took us to an incredible place. But I felt a shift in the last song. And at that point, I kind of felt like there was an opportunity in the song you were singing. It was almost like we could have moved on, but the ball was in our court at that point to extend a hand to him and to pull him back in and saying, "I'm not ready for you to leave. I'm not ready for you to go. I want to pull you close to me, and I want to dance with you. This whole worship has just been a around and around and around and around deal. And as of late, you've been hearing Apostle talk about perichoresis as the ultimate expression of the relationship that exists between Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And that it's this intoxicating, inviting, consuming dance with one another. I watched you guys model that. There was perichoresis taking place on the stage today. Everyone, even though, yeah, you sang initially, you sang, you played, and there was this deference to one another. There was a moment you and I were looking at each other, and you were like, and I deferred, go ahead. And it took us into this last place, Matt, where I believe there was this opportunity to pull him in. And I hope wherever you're watching this morning that you're doing that there was a creative moment allowed by what was being modeled here for him to come into a deep and intimate place and to take us somewhere. And I believe we're in that place right now. And I don't want to underestimate the potential of what is happening in your homes right now. I don't want you to underestimate it. The potential of what Yahweh is doing in this moment as he initially pulled you close. But then in this creative encounter, I just saw it. I saw many of you pulling him close and saying, don't go away. Just open your hands again to that. Just open your hands to that again. Just receive in this moment what only comes out of the depths. What only comes in a posture of humility when we defer to one another. And when that happens, a sound comes, a voice is released, a melody is stumbled upon that takes us to an extraordinary place, a beautiful place, a place where on a Sunday in October in Carolina, something can happen that you will mark on your calendar the rest of your life. I believe in the power of that kind of encounter happening all over the place today. So just breathe that in. Let's just go back to where we started. It's your breath in my lungs. Just breathe them in right now. Maybe the most important thing you do all day today. Just breathe them in. Just take another breath right where you are. I feel grace for fresh encounters this morning. For a quality of in-breathing that goes to a depth in you that you've never been able to go, just by lingering. I literally feel like respiratory issues are being dealt with in this live stream right now. Just by a simple, faith-filled in-breathing of the goodness and the love of Yahweh. You want to take a guess at how many times you breathe a day? Just come up with a number. Just venture a guess. How many breaths you take in a day? Got your answer? Go a little higher. On average, you breathe 17,260 times a day. We do it without thinking about it. Absolutely unconscious most of the time, unless you have an obstruction. 17,260 plus times every single day. Paige, you said, and I would have never gone here if you hadn't sung the opening song, His breath, it's His breath in our lungs. It's His breath in our lungs. I want to tell you something today, that His breath is as accessible for me as my next breath. I just breathed Him in. I just did it again. I cannot not breathe the breath of God. Dr. Simmons in the Passion Translation talks about that powerful phrase in Genesis where it says that God reached down and he breathed the breath of life into Adam. That really literally what's going on there is that when he bent down and he formed Adam out of the dust of the ground and then he breathed his breath, he literally kissed Adam with his breath. I dare to say to you today that you are pneumatic, God-kissed dust. Pneumatic, God-kissed dust. Come on, revel in that. Breath of God in our lungs. You have 17,200 plus times opportunity every single day to breathe in the breath of God. 20 years ago, I got a revelation about the breath of Jesus that began to change things for me in a way that I find is still changing. And I simply read a paragraph, and I've quoted this before in years past here, but I read a paragraph in a college meteorology textbook. Yes, I am nerdy and geeky at times. And I was reading a meteorology textbook, and the guy was narrating about a person who might have lived 2,000 years ago who breathed the atmosphere of that time. And he said it's quite possible through the process of diffusion that the breath someone breathed 2,000 years ago has now so penetrated the atmosphere that it is possible for you and I to breathe the very same particles that person breathed 2,000 years ago. And I thought of Jesus at the end of the Gospel of John, breathing on the disciples, and by his breathing on them, they received the Holy Spirit. That's just, can it be that easy? Come on, just right where you are. Look at me. I am pneumatic, God-kissed dust because I am beloved. His breath is in my lungs because the resurrected Jesus breathed on them and they on us. What were you saying a while ago? I and him, he and me. That free flow of the very breath and life of God, as accessible as your next breath. Can it be that easy? Can it be that easy? I think so. I'll let you guys sit down and take a break. I could listen to this sound for the next 5 hours. Thank you for the humility you exhibit with each other that allows this to come forth. There are no prima donnas on this stage. And it's your willingness to become low and invisible and hidden and defer that allows this sound to permeate this atmosphere. There's breath in your lungs. There's breath in that frequency you play. And that's releasing something. Receive the gift of the circle dance these guys operate in, not only here, but with each other. It's a beautiful thing to watch. It's a beautiful thing to be joined into and to participate with you and to become one with you. This is fun that we get to do this. And we get to come into this largely empty room, but by the miracle of live stream, connect with people all over the planet, believing that his grace and his goodness and his fullness is as close to you as your next breath. I want to release that again this morning from the hope state, where we breathe hope. And while we breathe hope. the hope that Yeshua has given us. Receive right now the vital breath of his indwelling spirit. Don't make it religious. Don't make it hard. Yeah, just receive. His breath has been released in all of its fullness. And I simply stand in front of you, we stand in front of you, as simply portals into that dimension of proximity and accessibility. Just take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath. Thank you. Love you. It's really good to be with you this morning. It's good to be here. It's good to be live streaming. Apostle Damon is in Mobile, Alabama this morning with his apostle, Aaron Smith. And Apostle Aaron is celebrating his 30th anniversary at the Rock of Mobile. That is absolutely amazing. So I know a number of our folks and the larger family may be in Mobile this morning with them celebrating. And so we just thank God for Damon and what he is to us as the apostle in this house, as dad in this house, my goodness, it's just hard for me to talk about what's happened in this place over the last 6 months through the apostolic teaching that has come forth in this place. It is simply revolutionizing us and putting us in a place that we could not imagine. I'm really happy. This is new for me. To live stream in a largely empty room. So I'm basically talking to these guys up here on the front row that you can't see. And by extension, I'm imagining many of you at home, sitting out on docks, in the backyards, around fires, or in the house, tuning in and listening this morning. It's been an incredible 7 months for me since we've been sent home during this pandemic. And this time of quarantine. You've not seen me up here except in snippets, and I believe that is by design because I have relished being in the hidden place over the last 7 months. Just allowing him to do an unusual and a new and a uncomfortable work in me in the last 7 months that is still very much in process. And so what I want to share with you today, I think will parallel what Apostle's been saying to us, and I hope will support it. And I also want to bring a dimension that's unique to me because I don't want this to sound haughty because it's not haughty, but this journey we're on requires each of our participation in that journey. So your voice matters, your role matters, your being who you are matters. And so when Apostle asked me this morning, would I be willing to teach, and I felt like yes, that I accepted then this fact that my sitting in front of you was very important. And that I accept that. And I sit in that, and I believe that you're going to receive a dimension of grace coming through me from the reservoirs and the depths of his heart. Just as you've already received from these guys up here. This circle dance of all of us getting caught up in this wonderful, at times violent swirl of love that's taking us into ever deeper and more uncharted waters is absolutely incredible and necessitates all of us. And we'll say a little bit more about that. I think a word that comes to me that describes what the last 7 months has been about for me, and it's been a lot of things, but it's a word Damon used last Sunday, and he and I have been, bantering it back and forth in some of our conversations on the phone, but it's that word pressure, that I feel like the last 7 months have been an incredible pressure-filled time. It's interesting to me that how much in the last 7 months Paige has focused on the breath. You know, the coronavirus loves to attack the respiratory system. The whole George Floyd thing, I can't breathe, the social unrest that came out of that cry, I can't breathe. Here's a virus attacking the breath. Sharon and I just finished up an 11-day journey in the hospital where she had multiple issues going on, one of which was bacterial pneumonia, which was an attack on her respiratory system. And so in the middle of all that, and then today you come in and you sing right off the bat, it's your breath in our lungs. And all of this worldwide pressure we have been in the middle of around breathing. I mean, you can feel it. You can feel it in the atmosphere. You can feel it in the culture. You can feel it out wherever you're at and all of this. And now that describes, I guess, best to me the moment we are in right now. I believe it's a historic moment. I believe we will reference these months whenever it ends. I'm not sure it's going to end on a certain day, but we've been moving into it. I think we're starting to move through it and out the other side. Now, I dare not give it a completion date because in some sense, I will be processing what I've begun to process the last 7 months for the rest of my life. But I believe we're in what some mystics call a liminal moment. And a liminal moment is a moment, I think Apostle Aaron would call it the tension between two ages. Damon would use the word finishing season, where we're finishing something and we're beginning something. And it's like this. There's an overlay, there's a coming down upon another. You don't just step out of one age into another. But the liminal moment is kind of being in the threshold where you're coming out of this and into something that has, as of yet, not become totally clear. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard where we're going, but obviously we're getting some indication of this place, I believe, of historic rest that we're being called into, which I think started back in Kannapolis, with the whole Bob Jones prophecy about the next 10 years would be the year of incredible rest. And here we are, beginning it with an historic time of unrest, pressure. Jesus said in John chapter 16, verse 33, in this world you will have pressure. In this world you will have trouble. Take heart, be encouraged, I have overcome the world. The word trouble there is the word thlipsis, which at its core means pressure, which oftentimes can connote a time of great constriction and anxiety. So I just want to say to you, if you felt some of that, I certainly have. I'm not going to be the stud sitting up here saying it's been a piece of cake. This last 7 months has monkeyed with me in a way that nothing has monkeyed with me since I was diagnosed with cancer. I've had at least what I would call 3 liminal moments since I said yes to Yahweh, where I felt a measure of pressure and constriction that was historic for me. 20 years ago was this time of me with my dad. And me taking care of an elderly old man for 8 years put me in some situations where I felt this absolute incredible pressure. Talk more about what that's all about and why that's significant. A second time would be cancer. Third time would be what we're in right now. And most particularly, interestingly enough, this what I'm calling an 11-day journey with Sharon in the hospital was an unusually difficult 11-day hospital stay. But in the middle of all of that pressure, where there was this temptation to go into despair and great anxiety, I could feel that on the one hand, and yet on the other hand, I could feel this incredible enfolding. You know what I'm talking about? I wish I could say to you today that I have mastered the last 7 months like Jesus in the back of the boat. I've got my hands behind my head, and I am asleep in the storm. Brothers and sisters, I am not there yet. I am not there yet. 20 years ago, when a storm would come like what we're going through, whether it's a cultural storm, and I've not seen a cultural storm like this since I was 8 years old. 1968 was the year that Martin Luther King was killed, Bobby Kennedy was killed. We were in the height of the Vietnam War. We saw rioting that would make the rioting right now look like a Sunday walk in the park. And I can remember as an 8-year-old picking up on my dad's anxiety. But we've not seen that since that time. So it is an unusual time of pressure that we find ourselves in. So I wish I could say, like Yeshua, that I'm in the back of the boat asleep, and this hasn't bothered me just one bit at all. In fact, I'm not sure I trust the person who's saying that. And I could get into a Damon Thompson rant on that thing right there, because it's an amazing thing to me, the power of people's denial mechanisms in the midst of great pressure. Let me go ahead and just say to you right now, if there are some denial issues that need to be dealt with, let this time of great pressure allow you to deal with it, and don't try to button down the hatches. Don't suck it up, don't push it down. For goodness sakes, don't become religious and start spouting off a bunch of cliches about, well, brother, that's just not going to work. Not anymore. Not where we're going. That's part of what we're coming out of and part of what we're being carried into. And that's real vital that in the shaking that's going on, I really kind of hope you've been shaken by it. If not, there'll be something coming down the pike that will shake you. But it's in the shaking that we're catapulted into the new. So, no, I'm not sitting in the back of the boat this morning going, I got it figured out. But on one level, I think I do have it figured out. That in the midst of great pressure, there is this inbreathing that can occur. And it's interesting that a major pressure point, again, of this last hospital visit, even though there was this gallbladder thing going on with Sharon, that was the presenting issue, underneath it was this breathing issue, which is also part of another underlying issue of hypertension she struggles with. So her body literally is manifesting that tension between that pressure and how am I going to respond to it? What am I going to do with that pressure? And then at the same time, this enfolding that wants to get around and underneath and surround that pressure, that then has the net effect of dissipating it, where then the deep breath is accessible again. So we're in a historic time of incredible pressure. Embrace it. Embrace it. Learn from it. Grow from it. This is the gateway into our rest. This is the gateway into a historic period of rest, but it's being entered into as it customarily is, either by a storm or by a season or by a period, whether it's out there or whether it's in here or both. What happened out here beginning in March when we were sent home kicked off or precipitated something that was already going on inside of me that was not yet finished, but the pressure pulled it to the surface. That's what pressure does. Pressure has a way of helping you finish an issue that you're not finished with, that either you thought you were finished with or you had no idea was even there at all. And the fact that you're feeling pressure now around that issue means it's not dealt with. Now, what's the bigger picture in all this? Part of it is, I hope you're being processed in the middle of this. But all of us who've been listening to Apostle's voice the last 7 months are getting processed at a fundamentally deep level around the issue of the nature of God. Who is he? What is he really, really, really like? Not your churchy Sunday school heady answer, but what does your heart really, really believe about ultimate reality? The interesting thing about pressure and life pressure, it will bring what the heart actually perceives to the surface. What this really is a perception issue. And by perception, I mean this is all about how you see and perceive with the eye of your heart ultimate reality. And I'm telling you, I think we're on a long path journey into this that may take my entire lifetime simply to be one who says, I'm going to lean into the pressure around the Abba revelation until I can see it through, so that a part of my legacy is to be able to give a settledness and a rest about the ultimate nature of the heart of God. Now, most of you who are listening to my voice this morning, as Apostles made quite clear, are coming out of this pressure of a religious system that presented him as something less than Abba. In other words, what Damon's been talking about in regards to this bias or this bend in Western theology to produce a view of God as judicial. The black robe, standing behind a bench with a stern and displeased and an unhappy voice, who's really just ready to put the sinners into his hands and cut the cords that hold them over the pits of hell. Now, it may not be that dramatic, but Matt Putman, I've talked to you enough to know that that's an incredibly real issue for you coming out of the religious framework you've come out of. And just based on what we see in this group and just in the conversations I have day to day, that's a huge issue. It was not an issue for me, thank God. I'm real happy after the last 6 months and watching the pressure of what Apostle Damon has manifested in this room, and the pressure the religious system put on him as a young boy, as a young man, to perform and to do and to try to do all this stuff to please a God that he had a sneaking suspicion would never be happy with him. So you're in this vice grip of trying to do better, but ultimately knowing I can't get better enough to ever satisfy him. Now, if that's going on, and apparently it's going on all over the nation with those who are listening to his voice, lean into that pressure as much as you are able to lean into it. Because the exegesis of your heart, the unveiling, the ripping open, the splitting open of your heart around that issue, if it takes the rest of your life, well done, good and faithful servant. I am at least 23 years into the Abba revelation. Yahweh first started putting that on my heart back in the mid to late 90s. If I had to mark it, I would probably mark it with my first reading of Brennan Manning's Abba's Child. I believe he was the first voice, and I believe I read that book in 1996. And I remember when I left the system, I had a guy come over and help me with my desktop computer. And he was saying, you need to put a screensaver on this thing. And back in 1997, we put on the screensaver, interesting enough, the heart of the Father. So every time I would walk into my room, I would see the heart of the Father, the heart of the Father, the heart of the Father. Back in 1997, 1998, then I go home to South Carolina to take care of my father. And that season with Dad becomes the real crucible to take me into my first inklings and foundation of the Abba revelation. And it was one of those most intense, pressure-filled moments. And I'll probably get into some of the whys of that later on. But I want to say this. Here's what I'm trying to say in all of that, is that as of right now, I'm 23 years into this. And I'm still coming out of a hospital visit that really turned me sideways. I'm coming through a pandemic that turned me sideways. Let me say something about the pandemic. If I had been 25 years old, this wouldn't have fazed me. But having come through a pandemic when I'm 60, and I'm in a category age-wise that's considered a high risk, and I've already had a brush with death with cancer, there was enough humility and enough fear to go, and so probably early on, I buttoned down the hatches way down. You know, if I could have put an electric fence 100 yards around my house, I probably would have done that. I'm not there anymore. I'm still being precautious. But I say all that to say, 23 years into what is still unfolding for me. As late as 2 weeks ago, walking with Sharon in the middle of an 11-day journey in the hospital. Feeling the pressure, feeling the presence. I love your presence. Thank God now there's a marriage of presence in pressure where in that moment I'm not freaking out anymore. Oh my God, where's God? In fact, I had a conversation months ago with an older person who's still very much in the religious system. And they're old enough now where some of their filters are coming off. You know that about older people? They just kind of tell you sometimes what you're going, now 20 years ago you wouldn't have said that, but now I'll just tell you what I'm thinking. And all of a sudden, this person said to me, what's wrong with God? Said all these millions of Christians are praying and he's doing nothing. He's talking about the pandemic. Good, godly, Baptist, church-going all their life, leading Bible studies, youth leader, on and on and on a year. And then now they're screaming, going, what's wrong with God? You feel that? All these millions of Christians praying, and he's doing nothing. And you know she's partly right. But part of the problem is not with God, it's with our perception of God. And tragically, we reap the fruit of that perception. Which, I mean, we could stay here all day if you want me to unpack the mystery of that. And why does love do that? Why does perfect love do that? Why can't perfect love get in and alter that? Because the moment perfect love becomes that manipulative to try to change the outcome, then perfect love ceases to do what love has to do, which is to honor where you end up. Perfect love will come when you do this. But love will honor this. That's why I'm not a real great fan of this. I'm more of a great fan of this. You know, I get this, born in frustration, but ultimately it's this. Perfect love can get around this. Perfect love can enter into this. Perfect love can come. But you have to enter into the question this person's really raising. It's, what's wrong with God? No, their deeper question is, what's wrong with our perception of God? Not intellectually. I'm not so much worried about what you think about God. But when the pressure is on, and this godly person, I mean, they are praying. They are praying hard. But they're praying in this way. Come on up there. Would you please do something? Please, 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 please come. Millions are doing that. And I've seen zero fruit. In fact, this pandemic is much worse than I thought it would be. You know, it killed a dear friend of mine. A dear friend of mine that I walked this close with 20 years ago. We both came out of the religious system together. He walked in a measure of what we're walking into. And he got killed in this thing by the virus. What's wrong with God? You see? Maybe part of it, Matt, me pick on you, is that notion of the Father you carried in your heart. Because if at worst, he's a tyrant that's ready to baptize us into hell, then the pandemic makes sense. It's just judgment. But if that's not the issue, then what's going on? That's why I believe we are in the middle of a tumultuous, worldwide reset. One mystical, contemplative person that I read and listen to a little bit basically said way back in March, this thing is about a reset of the collective human consciousness. Now just let that go in. That's another big phrase. A reset of the collective human consciousness. Now, you can say that a lot of different ways. It's a reset around our heart's ability to perceive. What are you able to see? In these prophetic moments we get in here in the swirl, all of a sudden our perception begins to shift. And we begin to see the boundaries that we thought were here all of a sudden get removed out to here, and we begin to see what I saw in the live stream, which was respiratory illnesses being dealt with, being healed. I saw that. But if I'm still in a paradigm where I'm going, come on, God, heal some lungs up there. Do you see what's wrong with that? Oh, brother, I'm just waiting for a breakthrough. So we're going to keep marching around the church again and again and again, and maybe next year. I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been warfaring. Is it working? I think not. Something's wrong with God. Something's wrong with my perception. If I can say anything about the last 23 years, my perception of the nature of who he is changing radically. Now, I didn't have the problem of he's angry, he's mad, he's ticked off. In fact, you've heard Damon allude to the fact, and I think one of the reasons God put us together, him as an apostolic father over this son, I know what it's done for me, is that he and I have done this. I found a father, an apostle, a friend. Our relation, as you guys know, all of our relationship with him is multi-layered. But theologically, experientially, philosophically, existentially, we came from opposite ends of the spectrum and are meeting in this high, holy ground in this Zion elevated place in the Hope State. He came out of all of this religious baggage, which apparently 9 out of 10 of the people listening to me this morning have come out of that. But let me go ahead and say to you, there's a group coming. There is a group coming who are not religious, who don't have this baggage, but they come from this place. And the place over here that I came from was this place of feeling like I am absolutely, utterly on my own. I've called it what I call either a practical agnosticism, but that really wasn't strong enough. It was really a practical atheism. The place I came out of was, if there is a God at all, he's just not involved. I couldn't go so far to say what's wrong with God. I'm just like, I'm not sure he's really there. And if he is there, he sure is removed. So we end up being in the same place almost. You can be a cessationist over here. I've never heard of cessationism all my life. But I had a scientific bias against miracle because I believed in natural law. And I never saw anything that was an exception to that enough to cause me to go, wait a minute, something's askew until now. And I don't think it's that versus this. I think we're just stumbling into a higher law, into some finer frequencies that I could not discern and perceive with my heart when I was operating in this place, nor could you when you were operating in this place. So you see, I come out of this place where I'm on my own. I remember seeing the movie with Mel Gibson called Signs, that M. Night Shyamalan movie. And it's an alien movie. And the aliens are coming and they're taking over the earth and everybody's, scared to death. It's much worse than this pandemic. Can you imagine what we do if all of a sudden NBC News tomorrow said, they have landed. They are destroying New York. That's kind of what was going on in this movie, if you remember it. But there's this great scene with Joaquin Phoenix and Mel Gibson sitting on the couch watching the tragic events unfolding. And they get into this, and I'm going on 10 years of memory. It's been a long time since I've seen this movie. But they begin to have this discussion. Mel Gibson is a preacher who quit preaching, by the way, because his wife was tragically killed in a wreck. And he took off his clerical collar, laid it aside, and became what I was. And so they're sitting there watching this movie, and Gibson's talking to his younger brother, who is the character played by Joaquin Phoenix. And he says, you hear this quiet, it's dark, this music's playing and all this stuff's out. He says, there's basically two types of people in the world. Said there are those who believe in God, and they believe that there's somebody out there, and that somehow or another he's going to be the one that's going to see them through. And he said, but there's that other group of people who believes they are utterly on their own, and that we are on our own. You can see Joaquin Phoenix is trying to figure out which group do I belong to. Well, I know me. I clearly belong to that group. And I believe there's a third group rising up. I believe we're in the first fruits of seeing a third group rising up. I don't know how I'm getting here. I haven't looked at my notes. I've got pages of notes. I am my apostle's son, aren't I? Call this pastoral rambling. Damon said, I want you to give a pastoral perspective on what's going on. So this is kind of where I'm at. But I believe, I've been on a journey 23 years coming out of this. Apostle's been on a journey at least 23 years in the making, coming this way. You've been on a journey. Every one of you in this room and you watching have all been on a journey. And we're now in this tumultuous, pressure-filled moment where we're being invited. Let me put it that way. We're being invited into a dimension of heart perception in regards to ultimate reality that has the potential to shift the entire playing field of the planet and the cosmos. And it hinges on one word: Abba. That's why Romans 8:15 talks about coming out of the fear of bondage and your spirit being able to cry, Abba, Papa, Abba, Abba, Papa. You almost can feel the pressure of that as you're coming. Interestingly enough, both sides of this are manifestations of the orphan spirit. I believe the orphan spirit is as predominant in religious circles as it is in skeptical, atheist, agnostic, non-church-going people circles. It's this sense of underneath it, you get to the same place. There may be a God, but he's certainly not for me. He's certainly not Abba. He's certainly not Papa. Now, how do you know you're not there? Because I've heard good people who would tell me, I believe that he's Abba, all of a sudden go, what's wrong with God? In a moment of high pressure. The same person. If I went to the person who said that right now and said, do you believe he's Abba? Oh, yes, I believe he's Abba. What's wrong with God? Under pressure. They've been praying, and not seeing any movement. Then the heart speaks, and the heart says, something's off. Something's wrong. And the problem is the perception down here. 23 years ago, I was captive to my perception that had not been enfolded in what we just experienced today. What's changing my perception are moments like this morning. Sounds like you guys produced this morning are opening something up in me, forcing something to be processed, often by way of my tears. And no, let me rephrase that, not often, mostly, probably always. Have you been watching this the last 6 months? Have you been watching what happens to Apostle in the midst of this pressure of religion as it's being forced out, and he's entering into this place of the Abba reality and calling all of us to follow in that wake? But notice the tears. I'm watching many of you Sunday by Sunday, looking up, you've been right in my eye. Every Sunday I just see you with the Kleenexes in your hand, just processing, getting this out, opening us to an incredibly new dimension. So I believe that's what this year's been about. I believe we've been invited through this pandemic and social unrest and through the personal crises that don't make the newspaper. The personal little sense of pressure. Let me just talk to you about those. You know what I'm talking about. That little bit of life pressure that you're experiencing, maybe with the kids, it may be with the husband, maybe the marriage, it may be this, it may be that. But you're in the middle of pressure that is freaking you out. That on a fundamentally deep level, there is an opportunity, there is an invitation in this crisis to deal with a fundamental perception of your heart that might just be off. And so I don't want to see you miss it. I'm not going back to business as usual. I can't. I cannot go back to where I was in March. Oh, I could, but I'm not. Because I'm now beginning to see go back to Kannapolis. For those of you watching my live stream, if you don't know, back in January, we were in Kannapolis. And a multitude of things were happening back in January. It's interesting now to go back and revisit some of that in the light of where we are in October. But that we were being called early on to finish something. You know, see, again, in American culture, we've got this idea of rapid fire finish. Okay, we'll finish, we'll be done by March, and we'll be on our way. You know, and the first inclination I had that this was going to be a long path deal was 10 years to enter into rest. Actually, it was good news to me. I'm like, ooh, I got 10 years to get this kind of straightened out. Which now, in light of where I am in October, that's good news. I'd hate to be right now, you know, okay, it's time, we're going on to something different. You know, guess what we're going to be spending the rest of our lives talking about? Abba and beloved identity. Apostle is refusing to change the subject, and I am absolutely in agreement. I know the purpose of my life on this planet is to get as rooted and established in beloved identity as I can possibly get established, even unto the depths of what that means. Undergird it, because what it does, you see, how do you get rooted in beloved identity? Who's responsible for that? Yeshua. Yeshua came as the Son of Man, going to the forsaken place for you and I. He came as Abba, as Yeshua, as Son of Man, identifying fully with you and I. So Paul then talks about this glorious love of Christ that's limitless and beyond measure. And it's the love of Christ that seats me in beloved identity. And then seated deeply in that place, my perspective does this, and I can see into what I now call the Abba reality. I believe it's a dimension. All of a sudden, so rooted in beloved identity, you know what's easy for me now to be able to stand up here and say? And this started about 2 years ago. I crossed the line in 2018 somewhere, and some of you may remember this because I mentioned it a couple of times, but it came out like this. It dawned on me. I said, well, if Yeshua is perfect love, and he's the perfect face of Abba, then Abba is perfect love. Then it is utterly impossible for him to be anything other than perfect love. Let that go in. Let it go in to the deep place. Let it go into the religious place. Let it produce enough internal pressure that if there's something in here that still leans toward it, he's going to get me. He's going to get you, brother. And I can hear a guy 30 years ago say, man, that God in the Old Testament, he got ticked off, man. He got ticked off with people. And I remember thinking, boy, how do you reconcile that? You know? So here we are. That residue that's in you that still fears punishment can create enough torment to shut down your perspective. So how do you get out of that dilemma? I don't think you run into Abba. I think Jesus solved it. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man gets to Abba but through me. Thank God. That's not an exclusivistic statement. That's the hope of the world. Religion turned that into, brother, you got to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. You're going to go to hell. But no, it's I am the way. All who are weary and hungry and heavy laden, come to me, come through me, and in me, you're going to, all of a sudden, it's going to open up. So it's the love of Christ that seats me in a place. I call it the Sassafras Mystery. The highest place you can go to in the state of South Carolina is Sassafras Mountain. In the Hope State, there is a place you can go to called the Sassafras Mystery. And on the top of that high and elevated place, there sits a bench. And if you are seated on that bench in the highest possible place it's able to go in the Hope State, you can see a 360-degree panoramic view of anywhere. And I can hear you guys singing, I can go anywhere from here. It's the launching pad into what I call deep space mystery and the reality of the Abba reality. Seated in beloved identity. It then became easy. There's no way he can be like Jonathan Edwards describes. There's no way he can be like some of these preachers that you grew up with. It's just, as you would say in English, it's a non sequitur. It does not follow. It cannot follow. You cannot come to that conclusion. So beloved, love through pressure and pressure-filled moments. Okay, now I feel the shift. How does love perfect us? What's that look like? What did religion tell you? Religion said, follow all the rules, check off all the boxes, you'll get love perfected. Brother, you got to be, we called it holiness. You be holy. And so Damon, he knows much more about this than I do, because again, I came from this end. That was not an issue on that end of the spectrum. So you've got this notion of how love is perfected. And maybe he'll be happy. But see, how is love perfected? If I'm going to get to sassafras and enter the sassafras mystery and deep space mystery of the Abba reality, which is, I believe, what my generation, my place in all of this is simply to call people into a place of being as deeply seated in beloved identity as it's possible to be seated, then what will naturally follow? Wow. Now, how does that process work? And here's where we as Americans get really, really, really fouled up. It works by way of this. Love is perfected, tetelestai, telao. It's completed, it's worked in, oftentimes through great pressure. Love is perfected through pressure. I believe it's clear in the New Testament. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. It's going to get worked out as you go through some stuff. Ultimately with the goal of getting so seated in it that you can literally sleep in the storm. I believe that's coming. I believe there are storms that I have not been able to sleep through that my children, spiritually and literally, will be able to sleep through. Because of what's happening. If we do what is on this generation to do and give up our grandiose notions that we're going to bring the kingdom to its fullness in our generation and go, no, it's going to require a long path. It's going to require me laying down my life in obscurity for a foundation that others will be able to sit upon and begin to see things that I can only begin to dream about. Deep space mystery. I mean, go outside on a dark night, and with your unaided eye, you might can see 2,000 stars. But you get a small telescope, or no, just try a pair of binoculars. Then in your narrow little field of view with one set of binoculars, you now see 2,000 stars. Where back here with the unaided eye, you see 2,000 now because of a slight improvement in your optical capacity. You can now see in a small area 2,000. Bump it up to what you can see in a telescope. And now you're seeing objects that are billions of light years away. No eye has seen. No ear has heard. How does that happen in the Spirit? It happens by way of being seated. And a generation saying, I will give up selfish ambition. I don't have to be a megachurch pastor. I don't have to be a senior pastor. I don't have to be anything. I can just be seated in beloved identity, and by being so deeply seated in rest, emit a frequency that brings a small part of the restoration of the cosmos into its intended function. And if you're doing it, and 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 you're doing it, then each of us plays our... Look at what happened in this room this morning. We deferred to one another. We laid our life down. Anna did not insist, by golly, at 20 minutes into this musical deal, you better hand the ball to me so I can play my violin. No, she didn't do it. She was willing not to play at all. But then she found her spot. And then at one time, I couldn't tell whether it was Rudy or Anna playing. I looked over, fully expected to see you doing it, yet you were making a sound that sounded like a violin for a brief moment there. I'm like, and then this happens, and something's released, and then we're transported into a place. You see? This is how it works. And all of us, and my last piece of this in a few minutes is going to be your participation is vital. In fact, I'm going to say something heretical. He can't do it without you. Oh, yes, you can, brother. He's God. I know he's God. But he's love. And love, by definition, requires the involvement of another. It's a circle dance. It's a circle dance. God's just not going to bust in here and go, ah. No, it's a circle dance. What's wrong with God? He operates by way of a circle dance. You see? So love has to be perfected. And we have to welcome these moments of pressure and not brush them off. That's the spirit of American rugged individual. I'm going to go ahead and say this because it's not a political statement. I promise you it's not. What I'm about to say will not give you an indication of who I'm about to vote for. But our president, and I honor and respect our president, did not respond to his own diagnosis of coronavirus in, I think, an appropriate way that would have helped. In other words, he went through pressure and from a distance came out on the other side seemingly the same way. Maybe more emboldened as to who he was previous to the crisis. I would have loved to have seen that diagnosis break him as it would break me. My wife's 11-day journey in the hospital split me wide open. And I wasn't the one in the hospital. But I allowed the pressure of the moment to split me wide open. And that is the intention of any pressure-filled moment that we could have gone through. And I want to invite every one of you in this pressure-filled moment to embrace the fullness of the humility and the humiliation and the poverty of spirit that it's intended to bring, so that when grace comes, grace always bends down. Grace stoops down. Grace bends down, and love flows to the lowest place. So if I'm up here pontificating and posturing and strutting and love's going to blow right by me. Love's going to flow around my ankles and flow to the lowest place. That's why Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit. You know what you can translate that passage? Blessed are those page who've had the wind knocked out of them. Blessed are the tokas in pneuma. The poor, the poverty, the beggar who has nothing in himself and is reduced to begging in the spirit. He's had the wind knocked out of him. He's low to the ground. Love can get there. What's wrong with God? I'm strutting is what's wrong with God. And American rugged individualism is a part of the culture we breathe for generations. It founded this country and has been perpetuated through a lot of religious systems. I can remember way back in the day when I started little small groups designed to help people get together and just, come on, man, be transparent. Come on, man, be real. And most of the people in the churches I pastored at that time, I don't need that. I want to go, no, you're the guy that really needs it. But it was that sense of, I'm okay. I'm all right. I'm really doing okay. No, you're not. And the way love perfects is love's got to knock out the props of our infrastructure. Here we go. And ultimately posture me into a place of absolute dependence, utter helplessness, and extreme poverty of spirit. It's his breath in my lungs. My breath is insufficient. My breath does not do it. But if I'm postured to go, making room by way of pressure, then I can inbreathe his breath in such a way that invites me into the mystery of the circle dance. Love is perfected by way of pressure, and love flows to the lowest place. That's why in this season we're in, coming out of this religious baggage, that it's important to get as deeply seated into that as it is possible to get seated into that, so that this opens up, and more importantly, so that I can then enter into the circle dance that's going on among them where perfect love has no boundary, has no limitation. And as I make my way into that dimension and bring that dimension into this created realm, then I bring this. It's the old picture of the birds that we showed in here years ago, the murmuration. I'm still utterly caught up in wonder when I see that movement. And it's an image of the circle dance. I was sitting in the parking lot of CVS on December the 21st, 2016, about 5:15. It was gray and it was dark and it was overcast. And we were going to a staff Christmas party at Damon's house. And we were early, so I sat there, and all of a sudden these blackbirds just got in front of me. It's like a scene out of the old Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Birds, for a little while. They were all over the place, and all of a sudden, swirling. Dancing right there over the liquor store in Saluda, South Carolina. All this is going on right around me. And I was seeing a mystery. And now I realize I'm being invited into that. And if I just fall into beloved love, the love of Christ, then that opens me to this deep space mystery. And then here's the clincher. I become a participant. I become a vital, small piece of an incredibly big puzzle. Y'all hear me? This is really, really big. As I whispered a while ago, he can't do it without me. He can't do it. Hear me. Don't let that religious baggage get in the way. Again, what do you mean, brother? He's God. No, shh. Love requires my participation. So he's doing this all the time. Come on. This morning, he invited us in. And he's waiting for the audacious lover to go, don't you come away. Don't you go away. You come back here. I want to slow dance you. I want to twirl with you. And that fact, I can't breathe without you. I can't do this without you. That's what the 11 days with Sharon in the hospital did to me. We woke up at 3:30 in the morning. Well, she woke up. She never went to sleep on Saturday night before we went to the hospital with this gallbladder attack. And my wife's experienced a lot of pain in her life. I've seen her go through some pretty intense stuff that I wouldn't wish on anybody. And she described that 45-minute trip to the hospital in Greenwood that night as the worst pain she's ever experienced. In fact, she was begging me several times, pull the car on the side of the road and call an ambulance. I kept trying to say, Sharon, it's going to take us longer to get an ambulance there, but she was in that pain, that much pain. In fact, a couple times she said, I feel myself fading away. She's about to pass out, almost passed out in the hospital. And so we got in that hospital that night, and it was a long night in the emergency room trying to figure out. At that time, we didn't have a clue what was going on, didn't know what was happening to her. And the initial scans came back clear, so it was like, what do you mean there's nothing going on? All this kind of jazz. And then finally, 5 hours later, they whip her upstairs to a room. And I can't go. If she had gone in the hospital a month ago, I couldn't have gone at all. So at 9 o'clock Sunday morning, she goes upstairs, and I have to go home. And I'm leaving her, and I'm feeling vulnerable. She's vulnerable because she's halfway delirious, just doesn't really know what's going on. And, you got to trust these people, and you got to trust what's going on. And it's already all this chaos. So I go back home, and this is day one. I'm gonna walk you through day 1, day 3, and day 7. But on day 1, I go home and feeling lonely. I love my log cabin. I'm living in the right place, but it doesn't quite feel right when she's not there. And so I'm feeling this, God, this doesn't feel right. But I finally get ready to go back to see her on day 1 and feeling exhausted from having no sleep and just watching her go through what she goes on. And I come back in the room, and she's kind of half out of it. She doesn't remember much about that Sunday by this time, and she doesn't really know what's going on. And so I take a seat by the window. She's in the bed here, and I'm looking across the room, and it's quiet. The hospital is kind of a ghost town because they're not letting a lot of people in because of the coronavirus. And I look over on the board, and I get my first heart. No, I want you to feel this. You feel it? Feel the pressure? Think about your wife. Think about somebody you love dearly, having to leave them behind. They're in intense pain. You don't know what's going on. And you can't sit by their bed. You can't walk them to the bathroom. You can't help her do stuff she needs help doing. And you have to go home. She wants me there. I want to be there, but we can't. So then you back in, and I sit down against the couch, and I'm frazzled. You know, I'm not hearing anything from God. What's wrong with God? You know, that deal. And I see my first sign. Actually, it's a literal sign. It's the hospital sign by the bed that tells you the name of the nurse and the name of the tech. I kid you not. The nurse's name was Hope, and the tech's name was Diamond. Okay, hang with me. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm looking, Hope, Diamond. And I went, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. No flashing lights, no gold dust whipping in the room, no getting swept off my feet, but just a little blank hospital sign that says Hope Diamond. I'm in enough pressure, but my heart's 23 years into Abba. So I'm not at the place really of what's wrong with you. That's not where I'm at. But it's pressured, but I see. I perceive Hope Diamond. And something does this around that. I don't really know what it all meant on day 1, but by day 11, we had gone. How do you form a diamond? See, I didn't have any of this on day 1. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm feeling vulnerable and naked, and she's hurting, and Hope Diamond, and then 7 or 8 days later, I'm starting to feel this pressure revelation come in. I was like, Diamond, yeah. And it's like, and there's multiple layers to that. There's a word there for some of you. There's a word there for some of you. I speak Hope Diamond into the atmosphere right now. I just speak it. Whatever that means. Somebody who's listening to this is going to hear Hope Diamond and go, you're in the middle of the most pressure-filled thing you can ever imagine. And all of a sudden, somebody who's been in like pressure is whispering to you, there's a Hope Diamond in the process. There's a Hope Diamond being formed. You feel the pressure? That's good. You feel the pressure? That's okay. I say to you, it's all right. Because I also breathe. Right into that situation, I breathe the Abba reality because I'm seated in beloved identity enough to be able to go, His breath is in my lungs. His breath is in our lungs. We breathe that into hopelessness this morning, into such pressure-filled situations. Maybe you, too, are in a hospital room facing a situation that you feel like there's no hope. I speak the reality that a diamond's being formed, and there's a Hope Diamond being formed. From the hope state, I speak a process of hope diamonding occurring in the midst of great pressure. In fact, collectively today in this place, we've been reset enough by way of our heart's perception that in the midst of pressure that we don't have all the answers for, something good is at work because love always works toward a good outcome. And He who is perfect love is able to work not only toward perfect love, but work with you, work in you, effecting hope. Hope Diamond. Hope Diamond. Hope Diamond. One of the things I saw back in March when this pandemic hit, it's the Holy Spirit. I don't want to religious. Let me not make it too religious. I just happened to be walking in my driveway. And I looked up 4 days after we had been sent home by Apostle from the last revival we had. And I was feeling the pressure of this pandemic and all of the news and everything I just felt weak, felt vulnerable, felt naked. And I was walking out and I looked up and saw a rainbow at the far end of my driveway coming up like this. And it stopped right here. So it was half of a rainbow, pretty vivid rainbow, but going from here up to here. And back in March, I really began to feel like something around my perception was broken. That there was this much I was able to perceive, but there was something here that I was unable to perceive. But that I was in the midst of a process, and I saw this back in March, of a circle being perfected. 2 weeks later, your wife sent me a photograph of a halo rainbow, which is a rainbow that makes a complete circle with the sun's light right in the middle. It looks like an eye looking at you, but it's completely surrounded by a circle. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. He who has ears to hear. So back in March, I'm getting this revelation of, Johnson, there's something broken in you, but the good news is I'm trying to perfect a circle. What I didn't see in March was the necessity of the pressure. That it was by way of the pressure the circle would be perfected and ultimately be given shape as a hope diamond. And so through this hospital experience, at last, I began to see that circle be completed. In fact, on day 3 in the hospital, which was the worst day in the hospital, Sharon texted me at 7:30 in the morning on Tuesday morning and said, well, I crashed this morning. I'm like, what did you do, Mike? She said, 9 people came running into my room at one time, checking things, throwing stuff around, all kind of stuff. And I don't know what happened. I know her heart rate got extremely low, and her blood pressure went extremely low, so I'm assuming they thought she was having heart failure in that moment. She quickly got back up to speed and was able to call me an hour later. She said, well, I crashed this morning. And then she started telling me what happened. Because by this time, I'm still not there. I can't be there. Now she's crashed. I'm at home. And I'm going, oh, my God, my wife's going to die. Ah! You know how it is, And, by the time I get to the hospital that afternoon, she's been diagnosed with bradycardia, which is low heart rate, all this kind of stuff. Then they found out she had bacterial pneumonia. They found out she had 3 gallstones. And, oh, by the way, now that you have pneumonia, we better test you for COVID. And, I remember going, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God! Because it's bam, 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 bam. And so I'm sent back home, with all this hanging in the air. It takes 24 hours to get a COVID test back. And I'm going, I know she doesn't have COVID because we've been safe, blah, 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 blah. But, you're still in the pressure. You're going, oh, what if? And then shortly after 7 o'clock on Tuesday night, Jesse Powell, Jesse, you're listening, Jesse Powell calls me. And he's just talking to me about this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden he goes, oh, my God, I can't believe it. I was like, he said, go outside right now. You're not going to believe what's out there. So, he's somewhere else, but I go out my front door, and I see a rainbow. March, the rainbow's here. On that Tuesday, the rainbow's here. It stops right there. I swear, I got a picture of it. March, here, at my weakest moment. Go outside, you got to go see this. I pick up my phone to take a photograph. I kid you not, what time is it? 7:11. 7:11, for those of you who don't understand, you got to know it. 7:11 is the scriptural reference, basically, that formed the foundation, Matthew 7:11, for me to enter into the notion of the goodness of God. Because it declares, what father among you, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? How much more you being evil, will your Father in heaven give you good gifts? So it's always been a call to the goodness of God. So here I'm on day 3. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, go look outside. And I collapsed on my steps. I said, Jess, I got to call you back. I said, and I just started weeping. And I'm going, and it's like he said, here I am. Here I am. My heart, I didn't have any good news yet. Sharon's still in bad shape. But I've seen a rainbow that met me in my brokenness. And where I couldn't see, I went back in March thinking, I've got to finish this thing. I've got to finish it. No, you don't. You just surrender. And so you just surrendered, son. Here's the word. Here's the word. Let this thing, whatever it is, split you wide open. Don't you try to hold yourself together. Don't you try to band-aid it. Don't you try to bond it. Don't you put glue on it. Don't you deny it. Don't push it down. Let it split you wide open. Only way this works. Only way this works. First dramatic thing I saw during the pandemic was I heard a whisper after having 3 unusual supernatural awakenings in the night. I heard a fire alarm one night. I heard a loud telephone ringing, but it's one of those old telephones. Brrring, brrring. And then I heard at 7:11 in the morning a loud knock at my door. Nobody's at the door, no phone's ringing, no fire alarms going off. But I'm hearing in the spirit, it's time to wake up. And I heard a whisper on that third note. No, it wasn't 7:11, it was 7:07. It was 7:07 when the knock, and 7:07 is my dad's address. It's my dad's house, 7:07 Brian Dorn. I heard the whisper, go home. Go home, go home today. Go to Daddy's house. I want to show you something. And so I go to my dad's house and come up the driveway, and immediately I see something I've never seen. And there's almost 100-year-old cedar trees that my dad planted back when he was a teenager. Planted the cedar trees, and a huge limb was broken open. Huge limb was broken open, and it exposed an open place inside of the tree. It's a dramatic thing. I could teach you the whole revelation around that, but what I want you to hear this morning is a quote from the Gospel of Thomas that came into my path, and I was able to perceive it, that said, split a tree wide open, and there I am. Fall far enough into the pressure to allow it to split you wide open. There I am. There I am. Because perfect love, because what does it mean to say, hey, y'all, this thing split me wide open? That's a humiliation. I'd rather say, my God met me through this thing and I didn't waver one bit, brother. And I wavered. I got scared. I was broken. But I found in the split open place, Hope Diamond, half of a rainbow. I'm forming a circle, son. I'm forming a circle in you. I'm trying to draw you in it. I'm trying to draw you in it. And then day 7. Now the battle has shifted in the hospital. Her pneumonia's doing better. Gallbladder surgery is scheduled. But now Sharon's veins in her arms are giving out because she has been stuck so many times. And she doesn't do well with getting stuck. And she has not historically had the best veins in her arms. So I had this meltdown in the woods on that Saturday afternoon, which was day 7. And I just finally, you know what I did on that day? Right before this vein thing that I'm about to tell you about, I was in the woods and I just finally said, here I am, Papa. I said, here I am, Papa. And I felt broken and empty and split open and felt like I had nothing else to bring to the table at that point because I knew she was having this vein issue. And so I just, had a moment. And an hour later, she calls me and says, okay, I need you to pray. Said the nurse has gone to get another IV. This one has collapsed. And you could hear the panic in her voice. You could hear the fatigue in her voice. And so now I'm walking in the woods again, and it's about dark. And I hear the Holy Spirit just whisper, just go sit on sassafras, beloved son. And all I want you to do there is to breathe my breath. And just breathe it on Shannon right now. And see what's happening? I'm in the midst of pressure. Had a freak out moment earlier in the day, but now I'm able to go to sassafras and just take a seat. Look up. No questioning about the goodness of God. Nothing wrong with God. Just go sit, son. Just breathe it in. Breathe me in, and I breathe him in. I can feel the pressure, but then I also feel enough of his breath to start saying, Sharon, I can't sit with you. I'm not there beside you, but I breathe. And I started filling that hospital room with the only thing I had, my breath. No cliches, no formula, no God's man of power for the hour. It's all I got's breath. And you reminded me today, it's his breath. He breathed on the disciples, and they received the Holy Spirit. All I had was breath. And I just went, Sharon, you can't hear me right now. You can't see me, but I breathe on you. Breathe on you. Then she calls me and tells me a story. I wish she was here where she could tell it. She said, I'm sitting in the hospital room and I know the girl's going to get the needle, and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And all of a sudden she starts having an encounter where she sees something that looks like, and Sharon, I'm probably getting the details all screwed up, and I know you're probably sitting at home going, come on, now get the details right, but I'm doing the best I can. Where she sees a photograph. It's an unusual photograph with some unusual details. And she hears the Holy Spirit say, look closer. Look closer. This is so important, y'all. This is so important to perception. Look closer. And she looks at the photograph, and then all of a sudden, the photograph becomes, and she said, what's that word you use? She said, Susan Dixon uses that word a lot too. What is it? I said, tesseract? And she said, yeah. She said, the photograph turned into a tesseract. If you know anything about a tesseract, it's this. It's a multi-dimensional. Apostle Aaron has them at his church on the walls. I love them. I got them. I put them up here one time a few years ago, and it just messes with you in terms of dimensional reality. And she said the photograph turned into a tesseract. And she didn't know what it was. She just said, what's that term y'all use? Thinking more crazy, you know. And it said the photograph turned into that, and she looked through the photograph. You see, I believe in some sense perichoresis is part of a divine hologram. And holograms speak from the whole into the fragments. So when you're able to see holographically, you're able to see through. You're able to see into. This is huge, you guys. This is not heady. This is not intellectual. This is essential 101, seeing through and perceiving the Abba reality. She was able to look through. Look closer, she heard. Look closer. And so she's drawn into peace as she's looking closer. And all of a sudden, the photograph turns into an image on her arm, and she hears the Holy Spirit say, right there. Tell her to stick you right there. And so the girl comes in, and she starts thumping around. The girl, I think I got it right, Sharon. The girl says, I'm going to stick you right there. Sharon said, yeah. I went. So she called me back and said, got it in. You know, 30 minutes before, pray! then because in the mystery of somebody giving the only thing they have, being split wide open, I give you my breath, she's able to look through and to see through. And I'm speaking to a generation of people who are in a historic time of crisis, and we're being set up through tremendous pressure by way of being seated in beloved identity to look through and to gaze and to glimpse and to dare to call what we see Abba. I perceived on a sign on a Sunday, Hope Diamond. I looked through the sign and saw more than a nurse's name and a text name. I saw and heard a whisper. She's a Hope Diamond. You're a Hope Diamond. Pressure's coming. This 11-day journey. But you're going to get through it, and you're going to come out in a deeper way. I believe I could see up and see a rainbow coming together and an invitation into a perichoresis, a circle of unbroken love. That's where this thing's headed. He's inviting us into a place of participation where this circle can be unbroken. Will the circle be unbroken? That's the question heaven's asking you and me and us today. And there's an invitation to follow your pressure to the point where you allow life to split you wide open. And in that place within you, you will find He who is within you beyond you. The within or the beyond within. There is a beyond within you awaiting you being split open. There is a beyond, the power from on high, the power from beyond, the beyond within. But it necessitates a being split open. It necessitates a posture of weakness. Paul said in 2 Corinthians 12 that my strength is perfected in weakness. Now, Paul actually didn't say that. He said the Lord said that to him. If you go in Corinthians, it's actually red letters, where Jesus says, my grace is sufficient for you, my stooping down is sufficient for you, and my strength, what is his strength? I think his strength is his love. I think the perfect love is the dimension of his highest and greatest strength. You don't separate power from love. The power is in the love. So the greatest strength comes in love perfected, seated in beloved identity. And how's that done? It's perfected in weakness, which necessitates the splitting open, which necessitates the humiliation, which necessitates, okay, all I've got is your breath. But his breath in me is vital to the cosmos. Your participation in the circle dance from the split open place becomes the key to cosmic restoration. I think that's all I needed to say. It took me a long time to say it, but I feel that. I just want you to receive what's beyond my words this morning. Can you do that? I believe I'm supposed to stand here today. I believe I was supposed to speak today. When the apostle asked me to, I felt like the Holy Spirit said, yes, you need to say yes. And you need to share whatever comes out of what you've experienced and to see it as a necessary component in the restoration of this perception of the heart to be able to cry out in pressure, Abba. Because here's the end game. It starts in pressure, but you know where it ends up? It ends up with my granddaughter. I will become, through the miracle of a conversion again to childlikeness, I will become my granddaughter. You know what she does? I drive up in her driveway. I open my door. She runs to the door. My grandson does it too, but he's a little older now, but it's fun to watch Millie Kate do it. She comes in. You already know. What does she say? She comes and she'll go, Papa, Papa. You can just over and over, Papa. She has no problem saying, Papa. She doesn't understand. She doesn't got it all figured out, but she can look at me and perceive, Papa. And it's easy for her. No pressure, no constriction. She's come through the eye of the needle, or we are going through the eye of the needle. And on the other side of it, we're going to come out more childlike than we've ever been. Through the 11-day journey, I don't come home more constricted. I don't come home more afraid. I don't come home more weary. There was a temptation in that until I could feel the Holy Spirit say, no, just let it split you wide open. Just let it split you wide open. Because when you're split wide open, you don't have to hold it together. You don't have to devote the energy. Because you know the place I feared most of anything at all coming out of this bend over here? I feared being split wide open. Because I feared there'd be nothing there to hold me. I didn't have to worry about the mean God. I just didn't know God at all. And I'm on my own. So what did I do? Historically, I've always avoided that space. Navigate around it, try to do a teaching around it, the last 11 days put me in the very place that I vowed early in this pandemic. I remember riding by a hospital going, mighty God, that's the last place I want to go in the pandemic. And then that Sunday morning, here I am wheeling my wife in writhing pain, driving up to the emergency door. Going into the bowels of the hospital. I'm going, split wide open. Split me wide open. Split Sharon wide open. And in that place, I cried out, Abba! In the woods that night, Abba! And when the moment I could say that, here I am, Abba. Abba, here I am. I've got nothing else. I don't know what, Abba. Abba! That in that pressure, that humility, I feel it this morning. I feel it being released into the atmosphere. Not just through me, but through what we're being ushered into, through your participation. You're yielding to Flipsis and saying, okay, split me wide open. Split a tree wide open. There I am. There I am. You're split wide open? I feel the silence. You feel that? I felt that a lot the last 3 weeks, just no noise at all. He comes in the empty space. He comes in the quiet space. He comes in the space where you can't grab anymore. I know this is counter-American culture, rugged individualism. Pull it up by your bootstraps. Man up. No. Let it split you wide open. Let it split you wide open. Let it split you wide open. There I am. I come to the low place. I flow. Love flows to the lowest place. You feel that? You feel that? thought about asking y'all to get back up, but I think I feel something on the silence. I just feel something on the quiet. From this state of hope. While I breathe hope. From this exalted place of an emerging Mount Zion in the earth. No, we're not completed. It's not done. But I feel authority this morning in being split open and saying, silver and gold I do not have. Gift and talent I do not offer you. But I offer you something that I do 17,000 times a day. I offer to you breath. I offer you the breath of one who's been inbreathed, one who's been inspired, one who's been infused by holy breath, by wind of God. I am pneumatic, God-kissed dust, and I say to you, you too are pneumatic, God-kissed dust. Receive the kiss of God. Receive the kiss of Abba. You have nothing to be afraid of. Let him kiss you on your forehead, son. Let him kiss you on the cheek, daughter. And those of you who would be so bold, let him kiss you on the mouth. He would not violate you. He will not harm you. He will not abuse you. He is not a predator. He is not a judge. He is not distant and uninvolved. In the love of Yeshua was manifest the love of Abba. Abba was fully in Yeshua. Receive the breath. Receive it right there in a split open place. Right there in great pressure. I feel like some of you right now, the pressure is intensifying as this hour has intensified. Just let it split you open. Let the tears come. Let that which has been kept prisoner in the deep come out of the depths into the light, out of the darkness into light. And opening up in the wake of that old ancient well, old wellspring of living water, old image bearer of him who saw you before creation ever began. You were the eye, you were in his eye before it ever started. He imaged you, he saw you, and he beloved you. You feel that? I feel the birth pangs of that. I feel the birth pangs of Abba. I see it maturing one day. I see it maturing into Abba, Abba, Papa, Papa. I see people walking into the hospitals years from now going, Papa, Papa. And unbelievable things happening. Come on. Let this be birthed. Let this be birthed. Let this come. Let this come. It's his breath in your lungs. Take a deep breath right now of the energetic, inspired, infusing love of Christ. In the silence where once you spoke, that the enfolding of perfect love do what only an unfolding can do. give you peace and rest and wholeness. I see fragments coming together. Fragments of hearts shattered coming together in the unfolding. A wholeness coming, changing the way you see, the way you perceive. I thank you, Abba, for releasing the fullness of your life into this created dimension. And through the love of Christ, we receive the ability and the grace to perceive you and to join with you in the great, great circle dance of perfect love. So I say to those of you watching my live stream, peace I leave you with, not as the world knows peace, but the peace of the one who is utterly and completely whole and perfect love, for whom it is utterly impossible for him to be anything other than perfect love. And that love holds all creation and all things together. Peace I leave you with today. Amen.